The broadcast showed Victoria Vance's face, sculpted and cool, framed by the sterile lights of the press conference. She was there to put an end to the rumors, the whispers that had been circling for weeks. "There is no secret marriage," she stated, her voice as crisp and unyielding as her expression. "There is no child. As everyone is well aware, I have been single for all these years." I watched her, my wife, deliver these lines without a flicker of emotion. My gaze then drifted to the small figure standing in the doorway of the darkened living room. My son, Sam, was crying, his small shoulders shaking with silent, confused sobs. In that moment, the relentless, 4-year obsession I had nurtured for the woman on the screen simply evaporated, leaving an empty, aching void. Later, when she finally came home, I didn't rush to the door with Sam in my arms, my heart thumping with the eager anticipation of a newlywed reunited with his spouse after a brief but painful separation. I wasn't waiting for her at all. Instead, I sat in the dim light of a guest room, looking at my phone, rereading the few messages I had received that week. One was a digital copy of a medical certificate for a tubal ligation, dated 6 days ago. Below it was a single, life-altering sentence. "If you're willing, Leo, Sam will be my only child from now on." With tears blurring my vision, I had typed back a reply. "Come and get me. I don't want to be a part of the Vance family anymore." I stared at Victoria's handsome, impassive face on the television screen, a strange sense of detachment washing over me. The media had always portrayed her as cold, a woman of inscrutable depths whose true feelings were buried beneath layers of professional poise. They weren't wrong. This was my 4th year living in her world, under her roof. We had a beautiful, bright son together who had just celebrated his 3rd birthday. But now, Victoria, the woman who was my wife in every way but legally, had just announced to the world in the most serious, detached tone imaginable that neither our marriage nor our son existed. She calmly adjusted the gold-framed glasses that rested on the bridge of her nose, her dark eyes radiating a chilling intensity that seemed to cut right through the camera lens and land squarely on me, a silent warning to those with malicious intentions, not to harbor fantasies that would only lead to their own disgrace. With that final cutting remark, she stood up abruptly. Her team of bodyguards and her personal assistant moved in swiftly, parting the sea of reporters as they escorted her to a waiting car, which then sped away from the scene. I clicked the remote, and the living room was plunged into an unsettling darkness, broken only by the faint, cool glow of a single floor lamp in the corner. It was then that I heard it. A soft, choked sob. I spun around to see my little boy, Sam, standing motionlessly in the shadows, his face streaked with tears. His expression was a painful mix of hurt and bewilderment. "Sam," I whispered, rushing over and scooping him into my arms. "Why aren't you in bed? You were supposed to be sleeping." He buried his tear-stained face into my chest, his small voice muffled by my shirt. "Daddy," he pouted, "why did Mommy say she doesn't have a son on TV? If she doesn't have a son, then what am I?" The question felt like a physical blow, twisting my heart into a tight, painful knot. Victoria was a severe and reserved woman. She loved Sam in her own distant way, but her time at home was always limited, and her smiles were rare commodities. Sam looked up to her with a mixture of awe and fear, which made him more sensitive and perceptive than other children his age. As fresh tears streamed down his face, the last vestiges of the persistence I had clung to for so many years dissolved into nothing. I gently wiped the tears from his cheeks. "Sam, do you want to leave this place with Daddy?" "Where will we go?" he asked, his voice small. "Will we come back home?" I looked down at him and managed a faint smile. "No, we won't be coming back. This isn't our home, buddy. I looked him in the eye, speaking with a gentle earnestness. This is Victoria's home. We've been guests here for a very long time, and we've caused her enough trouble. It's time for us to go to our own home now. He seemed to process this, his little mind working to understand the massive shift that was happening. He nodded slowly. Okay, Daddy. I'll go wherever you go. Good boy, I said, carrying him back to his bedroom. I tucked him in, kissing his soft cheeks. You sleep now. Daddy will stay right here with you. Once he was breathing the deep, even breaths of sleep, my eyes fell on the picture frame on his bedside table. It was the only family photo we had ever taken together. In the picture, Victoria sat perfectly straight, her expression as distant as ever. I held a 1-year-old Sam, a shy, happy smile on my face as I leaned slightly toward her. She, however, wasn't leaning toward me at all. As I quietly took the frame from the room and later used a pair of scissors to cut the photo in half, it struck me with a strange clarity. The tiny, almost imperceptible gap between our bodies in that picture had been there all along, a premonition of this very day, making it all too easy to slice us apart. A week later, Victoria returned from her business trip. It was well past 10 o'clock at night when her car pulled into the driveway. In the past, Sam and I would have been waiting up for her, no matter the hour. Tonight, however, Sam was already bathed and sound asleep in his room. I wasn't in the master bedroom on the 3rd floor. I had moved my things into a guest room on the 2nd. When I heard the familiar rumble of her car's engine, I was standing on the room's small balcony, staring blankly at the message I had received 6 days prior. The image of the sterilization certificate still made my eyes sting. Leo, as long as you're willing, just nod. I'll treat Sam as my own son. He'll be my only child. My only child. I stared at those words until the screen went dark, until I heard Victoria's footsteps ascending the main staircase, until they paused directly outside my door. A firm knock followed. Leo, open the door. I wiped away the fresh tears from my cheeks and quickly hid my phone under the pillow. I'm already sleeping, I called out, my voice strained. Can we talk tomorrow? Before I could finish, the door clicked open from the outside. I was momentarily stunned, but then the reality of the situation settled in. This was Victoria's house, her property. Of course she had a key. Of course she had complete authority here. Why did you move to the guest room? She asked, a clear note of displeasure in her voice, making it sound even colder than usual. I slowly sat up on the bed, looking at her. The fatigue from her long flight was visible on her face. She pressed her fingers to her temples as she spoke, her voice slightly hoarse. I consciously ignored the flicker of sympathy in my chest and looked away. I haven't been feeling well these last few days. I didn't want to get you sick. I don't mind. Move back, she commanded. When I didn't move, she frowned. Leo, I want to sleep. You should get some rest, too. But she didn't leave. Instead, she walked over to the bed, leaned down, and scooped me into her arms. A week is a long time. Don't you miss me? She murmured, leaning in to kiss me. I turned my head, and her lips met my cheek. She froze, surprised, and a shadow of annoyance crossed her features. Leo, what is bothering you? For 4 years, I had never once denied her. Her physical needs were significant, and except for the rare occasions I was sick or she was traveling, we were intimate almost every night. If she was away for a week, she would keep me up all night upon her return. I had always been happy to comply, even deliriously content, because it felt like the only time she truly wanted me. I was always terrified of making her angry, but a deep, secret part of me almost craved it, because her anger brought out a different, more passionate side of her in bed. We had a huge fight once, and I ran off to stay with my friend Mark for a week. Victoria actually flew to another city to bring me back. In the hotel suite that night, the anger in her eyes was a potent aphrodisiac. I liked knowing I could make her lose control. But now, I felt nothing. My heart and my body were a dead sea. I gently pushed myself out of her embrace. "Victoria, let's end this." The words came out calmly, but they felt absurd. We had a child together, and here I was, talking about a breakup when we didn't even have a marriage certificate to dissolve, only a private agreement. Her expression shifted from annoyance to a cold, calculating surprise. "Is this about me clearing up those marriage rumors in the media?" I wanted to scream that it was about so much more than that. I could have eventually told myself that the press conference was just a strategic business move, something I had to endure. But she had denied our son. I couldn't get the image of his small, crumpled face out of my head. I couldn't accept it. "You know that was just for public consumption," she said coolly, as if explaining a simple financial report. "I'm very busy right now, Leo. I don't have time to appease you over these minor issues." I tried to remain calm, but my hand, hidden at my side, was trembling. My eyes burned, but I fought back the tears. "There's no need to appease me. I mean it. We can void the agreement. I just want custody of Sam." A flicker of disdain crossed her eyes. "You're using our son to try and force my hand, to make me publicly acknowledge your identity and his. It's not going to happen. Not now, and not for the next few years," she stated, cutting me off sharply. She looked down on me, her gaze dismissive as if I were a trivial problem she could easily solve. I felt the chill of the room seep deep into my bones, making me shiver. Before we got together, Grandma had gently warned me about this. But I had been young and fearless. Who cared if Victoria Vance was as cold and unyielding as granite? I believed my love could wear her down, that my warmth could melt her. But now, all I wanted was to be free, to be like water that could find its own path, not be trapped and frozen under one person's roof for my entire life. "Think about it tonight," she said finally, turning to leave. "When you've cleared your head, move your things back." The door shut behind her with a force that was slightly harder than usual, a rare crack in her composed facade. I pulled the blanket up to my chin and closed my eyes. In a few days, Grandma would be back from her trip. She was the one who had brokered the original arrangement between Victoria and me. If she gave me her blessing, I could take Sam and leave. The Vance family valued their lineage, but they valued status and power more. Victoria's father had never been particularly fond of me or Sam. He had another, more suitable son-in-law in mind. My departure would probably be a relief to him. The next day, Victoria's father paid a surprise visit. He made some casual inquiries about Sam's well-being before getting to the real reason for his visit. "You saw Victoria's press conference about the marriage rumors, didn't you?" he asked. I nodded. He smiled, looking quite pleased with himself. "I never expected Victoria to take this so seriously. Those rumors have been floating around for years, and she never bothered to address them. But the moment she heard that Julian got divorced, she was quick to set the record straight about you." He chuckled, a sound that grated on my nerves. "I just didn't think she'd go so far as to deny Sam, too. But then again, she's been smitten with Julian since they were teenagers." I sat there, a buzzing sound filling my ears. He was right. She had never bothered to clear up any of the other rumors. But this time was different. I knew who Julian was, of course. He was one of the men her family had considered a prime candidate for her husband. But he had married someone else years ago. I had never seriously considered the possibility of them getting together, but apparently Victoria had been carrying a torch for him all this time. She had only agreed to my grandmother's proposal, to our arrangement, because the man she truly wanted was unavailable. "Leo," Victoria's father said, patting my hand with a false sense of warmth. "You're a smart boy. Your situation might be something you can tolerate, but what about Sam? Do you want him to live his whole life in the shadows?" He left soon after, leaving the house in a profound silence. Outside, the wind picked up, scattering the last of the wilting flowers from the garden. They were swept away, vanishing without a trace. I pulled out my phone and read Clara's message one more time. "Whenever you're ready, Leo. Sam can be my only child." Dot. The tears finally came, flowing freely as I typed my reply. I wasn't going to wait for Grandma to return. I had to get out of the Vance family home now. I started packing, gathering my things and Sam's, getting ready to leave for good. The household staff watched, looking distressed and uncertain, before one of them quietly slipped away to call Victoria. By the time her car screeched into the driveway, the driver of the rental car I'd called was loading my last suitcase into the trunk. Clara's flight was due to land in 3 hours. She was coming to take Sam and me away from this city, away from this life. I'd lost my own mother when I was a boy, so I knew firsthand how difficult life could be for a little boy without a mother's love and protection. I watched Victoria step out of her car, her face an icy mask against the darkening evening sky. The look in her eyes as she stared at me held no warmth, only a cold fury. Sam seemed to sense the tension and tightened his grip around my neck, a little scared. I kissed his head reassuringly and asked one of the maids to take him inside to play for a few minutes. Once Sam was out of sight, Victoria strode toward me, her brow furrowed with annoyance. "Leo," she began, her voice low and dangerous, "have I been too lenient with you these past few years?" I let out a soft, humorless chuckle. "You have," I said, and I meant it sincerely. "You took care of us, and I am grateful for that. Except for the small matter of not loving me or acknowledging our son." "You need to think this through very carefully," she warned. "Without the Vance family name behind you, you and Sam are nothing." "And what are we if we stay with the Vance family?" I countered. "What more do you want, Leo? Besides a title, what is it that I haven't given you?" She had given me 4 years of her life. It was true. In all that time, she hadn't been with another man. We even had a beautiful son together. Within the walls of this estate, the staff called me the young master-in-law. But outside, to the city's elite, I was just a laughingstock, and my son was nothing more than an illegitimate secret. "I don't want anything," I said quietly. "I just want to leave. I want to take my son and go." "Leo, I will say this only once," she said, her voice dropping to an even harsher tone, a level of severity I had never heard from her before. "Move your things and your son's things back upstairs right now. I will pretend that none of this ever happened. And if I say no?" She stared at me, her gaze unwavering. "Step 1 foot outside that gate, and you will never be welcomed back." Just as she finished speaking, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen, and the hard lines of her face seemed to soften almost imperceptibly. She stepped away to take the call. Her voice was different now, gentler. "Don't worry, I'm on my way. Send me the address. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She hung up and walked toward her car. After a few steps, she seemed to remember I was still there. She turned back and ordered the maids. "Put their things back where they belong. I want everything back to normal before I return tonight." Then her eyes met mine again. "And you will be moving back into the master bedroom tonight. I don't want to find you in the guest room again." She didn't wait for my reply, assuming my silence was compliance. Without another word, she got in her car and drove away. The staff looked at me, their faces full of concern. "Sir, please, just go inside. We'll handle the luggage," one of them pleaded. They started to unload my suitcases, but I stopped them. "There's no need. We're leaving right now." They looked at me, their worry genuine. Over the years, I had always been kind and easygoing, and they had come to treat me with real respect. "But, sir," the head maid said, When Mrs. Vance returns, please, just tell her, just as she said, that after this, Sam and I will never set foot in this place again." I lowered my gaze, hiding the tears that welled in my eyes. "But you know her temper," another maid whispered. "She's so determined. If you really leave, what will happen? And the young master, he's a Vance after all." "I know how stubborn she is," I said, offering them a weak smile. "That's precisely why I have to go now. This is my best chance." Her angry words, her ultimatum about me leaving, combined with her obvious eagerness to go and meet someone else, it gave me the opening I needed. Otherwise, getting Sam away from her sphere of influence would have been nearly impossible. Victoria Vance was a powerful woman who only let go of things when she chose to. "We can all see that she cares for you and the young master," the maid continued, trying one last time. "Every time she comes back from a trip, the very first thing she asks is where you are." I couldn't help a small, sad laugh. Victoria was a proud, self-assured woman. She was driven by her desires, but she wasn't promiscuous. In fact, she was incredibly particular. That's why she had only been with me all these years. I was clean, my background was known to her, I was convenient. Her first question upon returning home was always about my whereabouts, but it was a question driven by physical need, not affection. "Thank you for your kindness," I said softly, "but none of that matters to me anymore." Without another word, I picked up my son. "Take care, everyone." As the evening darkness settled completely, I walked toward the waiting car without a shred of hesitation. Seeing my resolve, no one tried to stop me. As I climbed inside, Sam whispered in my ear, "Daddy, does this mean I won't have a mommy anymore?" I kissed his soft cheek. "Victoria isn't your mommy, sweetie. But don't you worry. One day you will have a mommy who loves you more than anything in the world." The car's engine roared to life. Sam pressed his face against the window, watching the grand estate that had been his only home slowly recede into the distance. It was the place he was born, a gilded cage where he was sheltered and hidden because of who his mother was. Those walls held so many memories, both joyful and sorrowful. "Are you going to miss it, Sam?" I asked softly, my own heart aching with a complex mix of grief and relief. Sam shook his head. "I was just thinking," he said, "that I can't take my swing set or my pony with me." "We'll get you a new swing set and a new pony," I promised. He turned from the window and snuggled into my arms. "Mommy doesn't want me," he said, his voice small but firm. "So I don't want her either." "That's right," I murmured, hugging him tight. "She's not Mommy. She's Aunt Victoria." I quietly brushed away a tear that had escaped and was tracing a path down my temple. The enormous estate finally disappeared from view, and we drove on into the night. Julian emerged from the private room, dressed in clean clothes but still looking shaken. He stuck close to Victoria's side, as if afraid to be left alone. "It's all right now," Victoria said, her voice gentle as she noted his pale face. "Those people are gone. They won't bother you again." But Julian just clutched her sleeve tighter. "Victoria, they'll be back. There were so many people here tonight, and they still dared to come in and try to humiliate me." His voice broke as he began to sob. "They hate me. They'll never let me go." He gripped her sleeve so tightly that the fabric wrinkled, and a delicate, custom-made brooch she was wearing came loose and fell, landing in a puddle of spilled wine on the floor. Victoria's brow furrowed in sudden annoyance. She pushed his hand away and bent down to retrieve it, but Julian grabbed her arm first. "It's dirty now," he said. "It's not that valuable anyway. I'll buy you a new one." She hesitated for a moment before pushing his hand away again, more firmly this time. She picked up the soiled brooch, carefully wrapped it in a clean tissue, and handed it to her assistant. "Have this cleaned." Julian, his eyes still glistening with tears, looked momentarily dazed. Then a bittersweet smile touched his lips. "You treasure it so much. Was it a gift from someone important? That man, Leo?" Victoria didn't answer. She just glanced at her watch. It was getting late, and she wanted to go home. "I'll have my driver take you home so you can rest." "Victoria, it's been years," Julian pleaded. "Can't we just hang out tonight? It's so rare for all our old friends to be together." Others in their group chimed in, echoing his sentiment. "Yeah, Victoria, we're all here. Let's have some fun." She didn't reply. Her thoughts had suddenly drifted to Leo. They had been at odds lately, sleeping in separate rooms. 4 years they had been together, and their son was already 3 years old. Only now was she discovering this stubborn, defiant side to him. It was unsettling. The usual peace and stability of her domestic life, the one part of her world she never had to manage, was in disarray, and it was starting to affect her mood, even seeping into her work where she had made a rare, minor error. This couldn't continue, she thought. She had been far too indulgent with Leo over the years. It had emboldened him, given him the nerve to secretly leak information to the media, trying to force her hand and make her publicly acknowledge him and Sam. She had decided to give him the cold shoulder for a while, to let him reflect on his reckless audacity. Julian pulled her back down to sit with him, and their friends eagerly refilled their glasses. Victoria wasn't in a good mood, but she drank with them anyway. After a few rounds, she felt a light buzz. Julian handed her a glass of warm honey water. "Headache?" he asked softly. "Drink this. You'll feel better." She looked at the man before her. Time had matured him, turning him from a boy into a man. But looking at him now, she felt no trace of her old infatuation. Instead, her blurred vision superimposed another face over his, the face of the man who always seemed to be disrupting the orderly currents of her life. Victoria pushed her chair back and stood up. "It's getting late. I have an early meeting tomorrow. You all carry on. I'll host next time." "It's so late. You should just stay over," someone suggested. "We already have a room prepared for you." Victoria reached for her coat. "I don't like staying out." It was true. Over the years, no matter how late an engagement ran, she always went home. If she absolutely had to stay somewhere overnight, she always chose the hotel closest to her own house. Julian bit his lip, looking like he was on the verge of tears again. "Victoria, do you just not want to be around me?" "No, don't overthink it. You cleared up those rumors for me. I was so happy," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But now, it seems like you don't mind him so much after all." Victoria looked at him, her expression hardening. "I just don't like people discussing my family and my personal life." "So, do you like him? Even a little?" Her voice turned icy. "Do you really think I'm the kind of person who gets lost in romantic relationships?" Her life was a series of carefully planned strategies. Her career, her finances, even her marriage and feelings were all part of a master plan. There had been some unexpected variables, of course. She had ended up with a man she never thought she would, but she had quickly adjusted, incorporating him and their son into her world. But everything, including them, had to serve her career. It would have been the same even if she had married Julian. She pressed her aching temples, sidestepped Julian, and walked out of the room. Her emotions had been too swayed by Leo lately. Before him, her life had been work, and only work. There was no room for anything else. The car pulled up to the gates of the estate. As usual, only the servants came out to greet her. Victoria resisted the urge to ask where Leo was. She handed her coat to a maid and went straight upstairs. She went to the second-floor guest room first, pushing the door open to find it empty. A sense of relief washed over her, and her anger began to dissipate. It seemed he had listened after all, and moved back to the master bedroom. If he was going to be good, then she would reward him. Perhaps she would even consider changing their private agreement to an official marriage certificate. Feeling her mood lift, she headed up to the third floor. The master bedroom door was closed. She pushed it open, and the sensor lights flickered on, illuminating the large, neatly made, and utterly empty bed. Victoria stood frozen in the doorway, her face slowly darkening into a cold, hard mask. A few seconds later, she walked down the hall to the children's wing. Sam's small form was not in his bed either. Victoria walked slowly into her son's room. Everything looked the same, but she immediately noticed something was missing from the bedside table. She remembered a photo frame was always there. Now, it was gone. Victoria pulled open the drawer of the nightstand. She immediately saw half of a photograph lying face down. It had obviously been cut. She had a sinking feeling as she picked it up. Sure enough, the photograph that once showed 3 people now showed only 1. She was the only one left. He and Sam had been cleanly cut away. Victoria clutched the piece of photo paper in her hand, a vein pulsing in her temple. After a long moment, she turned and strode out of the room. Since he had chosen to leave, he had no one to blame but himself. If he ever wanted to come back, the door he had just walked out of would be nearly impossible to open again. It was late, and Sam was already fast asleep in the adjacent room of the hotel suite. The hotel was owned by the Reed family, and this penthouse, where Clara used to stay when she was in town, had been kept vacant for years, though it was cleaned daily and adorned with fresh flowers. When the doorbell chimed, I jolted awake from a light doze on the sofa. I knew it was her, but a wave of nervousness washed over me. We hadn't seen each other in 4 years. She had been on the other side of the world, and I had been living in the gilded cage of the Vance estate. I never imagined she would do something so drastic after Victoria's press conference. Clara was the Reed family's only child, their sole heir. My heart was a heavy, aching weight in my chest. The moment I opened the door, tears sprang to my eyes. Clara stood in the hallway, looking tired from her long flight, a coat draped over her arm. She was dressed in a simple, dark outfit, her figure tall and slender. In 4 years, she had gotten thinner, and her entire aura was different. "Clara," I choked out, my voice thick. She stepped forward and pulled me into a tight hug. "Leo," she whispered, her own voice choked with emotion. Her arms tightened around me until I could barely breathe, and then just as suddenly she let go. She cupped my face in her hands, gently wiping away my tears with her thumbs. "Hey, no more crying. I'm here now. It's all going to be okay." "Why did you have that surgery?" I asked, my voice trembling again. "What about your uncle and aunt? Your parents?" Clara closed the door and leaned against it, her gaze soft as she watched me. "Are you only worried about them?" "Of course I'm more worried about you," I said, my heart stinging as I looked at her tired, thin face. "Even a minor surgery has risks. You're their only child. You're not even married. You don't have kids. What if something had happened?" "Worried about what?" Clara took my hand, and her eyes suddenly fell to my ring finger. In my memories, her eyes were always laughing, but now they were shadowed with something I couldn't quite place. I realized with a jolt that I was still wearing the simple wedding band Victoria had given me. I had worn it for 4 years, and it had become such a part of me that I had completely forgotten to take it off. "Worried that something would happen to me?" she continued, a faint, teasing smirk on her lips. "Or worried that I wouldn't be able to have children?" Her grip on my hand tightened steadily. Clara, I whispered, surprised by her intensity. The Clara I remembered was never like this. Leo, don't call me that, she said softly. I don't want to be your sister. She lifted my hand to her cheek. I never wanted to be your sister. We weren't related by blood, just connected by a long-standing friendship between our families. Before my grandfather passed away, our families were close, but after he died, my father fell ill, and our family's fortunes declined. My grandmother took me in to raise me, and we lost touch with the Reeds, but Clara never stopped writing to me. She would fly back to see me whenever she could, until her parents sent her abroad for university. My grandmother had hinted that the Reeds had arranged a suitable fiancé for her over there. By then, I was a young man, and I understood that I couldn't cling to her like a child anymore. I had a vague, unacknowledged crush on her, but I couldn't handle the pressure from the adults, so I made the painful decision to cut off all contact. Later, both my father and my grandmother passed away. As a final act of kindness, my grandmother used her lifelong connections to entrust me to the Vance family. Living with them during my formative years, it was perhaps inevitable that I would fall for the steady, handsome, and powerful Victoria. Grandma, deeply sentimental, had arranged everything. I still remember the day Victoria agreed. My heart hammered against my ribs, and my face burned with a shy, ecstatic heat. 4 years had passed in a blink. It seemed that trying to hold on to something that was never truly meant for you would only ever lead to a dead end. As fresh tears welled in my eyes, Clara suddenly lifted her head and kissed them away. Leo, let's get married, she whispered. From now on, Sam will be my only child. Whatever Victoria Vance doesn't recognize or want, I, Clara Reed, do. I looked into her eyes, which sparkled like molten glass, making my face feel warm. My heart began to beat in a rapid, steady rhythm, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a strange sense of peace. Distant memories from my youth came rushing back, falling asleep on her back countless times, jumping into her arms with my eyes closed, trusting her completely. And then, the memory of a stormy night, when she stood outside my grandmother's house for hours, soaking wet, while my foolish pride wouldn't let me open the door. Clara, please, just give me some time, I pleaded. At least until I can sort things out with my grandmother's memory, with the Vances. Sam is still technically of their bloodline. If I'm going to seek full custody, I need to do it the right way. Okay, she said without hesitation. No matter how long it takes, I can wait. A few days later, the media was buzzing with photos of Victoria having a private dinner with Julian. The paparazzi had captured them at a moment when he was laughing, leaning intimately toward her. The angle and lighting of the photos made them look like a romantic couple. And the internet was in an uproar, especially given her recent, firm denial of any relationship. My phone vibrated endlessly with messages and calls, but I ignored them all. After dropping Sam off at his new kindergarten, I went to the mall. Clara had bought both of us some beautiful, expensive gifts, and I wanted to return the gesture. Just as I was about to enter a high-end boutique, I ran into Ethan, Victoria's younger brother, and a few of his friends. I gave a brief nod and tried to walk past them, but Ethan stepped in my way. Leo, he said, a smug look on his face that he never dared to show when his sister was around. What's up? Seen the news? He lifted his chin, that smirk never leaving his face. Don't you think my sister and Julian make a great couple? They do, I replied calmly. Ethan was taken aback. Leo. Back when he used to taunt me behind Victoria's back, I would retreat and cry in frustration. He clearly expected a similar reaction now. Is there anything else? I asked. Aren't you panicking? He pressed. If my sister and Julian get back together, do you really think there's a place for you in the Vance family anymore? Aren't you jealous? I looked at him, my expression placid. There was never really a place for me or Sam with the Vances, was there? Well, at least you know your place, Ethan sneered, though his expression was less triumphant than before. I ignored him and walked into the store. I had been here a few times before and recognized one of the sales associates. I told her I was looking at brooches, and she immediately began showing me the latest designs. They were the same brand I used to buy for Victoria. Seeing them brought a fleeting memory to the surface. She had been wearing the brooch I bought her on the very day she so heartlessly denied our son's existence on national television. Did she feel even a flicker of guilt? I quickly pushed the thought away. "Let me see these," I said, pointing to a different display case. Clara's style was the complete opposite of Victoria's. I chose 2 pieces with a bold, artistic design and had them wrapped. It was only after I had paid that I realized the card I had used was the supplementary credit card Victoria had given me for my personal expenses. For 4 years, she had woven herself into every fiber of my life. But if I was going to cut ties, I needed to make a clean break. After a bit of hassle, I had the transaction refunded and paid again with my own debit card. Then, standing outside the store, I went into my mobile banking app and unlinked all of her cards from my accounts. As I was walking out of the mall, my phone rang. It was Victoria. I hesitated for a second before answering. "You bought something and then returned it?" she asked, getting straight to the point. "I used the wrong card," I replied honestly. "I switched it." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. "That card was for you to use." "Not anymore." "Leo, how long are you going to keep this up?" I gave a weak, tired smile. "I'm not holding anything against you, Victoria. I've left the Vance estate. I'm done." "Are you sure?" "Yes." The call ended abruptly. I stood there for a moment, then opened my contacts, blocked her number, and deleted it. Back at the hotel, I bathed Sam and tucked him into bed. Then I took the gifts I had bought for Clara and walked to her suite. Her door was slightly ajar, and as I raised my hand to knock, I overheard her speaking softly inside. "Dr. Chen, when will it get better? Will I always have this psychological barrier to intimacy?" I froze, the gift bag slipping from my grasp and landing silently on the carpeted floor. A moment later, Clara called out, "Leo, you heard everything, didn't you?" "Clara," I said, stepping inside. "I looked it up. That kind of surgery. It shouldn't have side effects like that." She was perfectly calm. "Everything has exceptions, Leo. Maybe I'm just the unlucky one." Tears streamed down my face. "What are you going to do? What did the doctor say?" "There are no clear answers yet. He just said I should try. With someone I trust completely." My gaze dropped to the floor as I pressed my lips together. Clara, however, seemed completely unbothered. "Don't overthink it. It's not a big deal." "How can you say that? It's a huge deal. I've lived without a partner before. I can manage, but—" She suddenly stepped closer. "Leo, if you're worried about your future happiness, well, I'd be glad. But if it's anything else, I don't care. I've always been this way, cold and selfish. Nothing else matters to me except for you." She gently touched my face. "Don't pity me." She finished speaking, grabbed a light coat, and said she needed some air. "Stay with Sam. I'll be back soon." After she left, I sank onto the sofa, my mind in turmoil. If what she said on the phone was true, if she might always struggle with intimacy. I bit my lip, a firm resolve solidifying in my heart. Then I would marry her. I couldn't bear the thought of her being slighted or rejected by anyone else because of a sacrifice she had made for me. I went to see Victoria's grandmother. "Since you've made your decision," she said, her voice heavy with resignation. "I won't make things difficult for you. It wouldn't be right to trouble the grandchild of a benefactor. In the end, Victoria made a mistake, and she hurt you and Sam." She shook her head, tears welling in her tired eyes. "She was a good woman, and it was a shame things had to end this way. Your kindness to me has far exceeded any debt you owed my grandmother," I said, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Thank you so much for taking care of me all these years. I won't be able to look after you anymore. Please take care of yourself. Remember to bring Sam to visit me sometimes," she said. "I will, and if you ever run into trouble, let me know. After all, Sam is part of the Vance family. We won't ignore that." "I will, Grandma." "Go on, then," she waved, and an attendant escorted me to the car. As we drove away from the Vance estate for the last time, I passed Victoria's car coming in the opposite direction. Her car screeched to a halt, and she got out, but I didn't ask my driver to stop. We had no legal ties. Breaking up was, in the end, remarkably simple. We didn't even need to see each other or exchange another word. In the pale, late autumn light, Victoria stood on the side of the road in just a thin blouse and trousers, watching my car drive away. She stood there for a very, very long time. Clara wasn't waiting in the hotel lobby. I went upstairs and returned to my suite, but there was no sign of Sam. I was about to knock on Clara's door when it swung open. Her hand shot out, grabbed my wrist, and pulled me inside. "Clara, where's Sam? And why are you so hot?" I hesitantly reached out to touch her forehead, but she pressed me down onto the large bed. Her brow was beaded with sweat, and her eyes were fiery red. "Don't worry, Sam is at my parents' house," she said, her voice raspy. "Leo, I took some calming medication today." Her scorching forehead rubbed against my cheek, my neck. It felt like lava. "This reaction, I'm so uncomfortable, Leo. Leo." Her dry, burning lips found mine, pressing tightly, but awkwardly, as if she didn't know how to proceed. The medication, or whatever it was, seemed to be hitting her hard. Sweat seeped from her pores. "Clara," I managed to say. But she took the opportunity to deepen the kiss. My hands were pinned to the bed by her grip. She kept repeating my name over and over until finally I tasted something salty. I wasn't sure if it was her sweat or my own tears. "Leo," she suddenly stopped, pulling back to stare at me, her eyes intensely red, her pupils reflecting a tiny version of me. "You can yell at me, or hit me. Do anything," she said hoarsely, trying to push herself off me. My tense body slowly began to relax. Under her feverish gaze, I closed my eyes. I reached up and hooked my hand around her neck. "Clara," I whispered, calling her name the way I did when we were just kids. She was visibly moved. She lowered her head and kissed me again, hard. "Clara, don't be scared," I murmured against her lips. "Let me handle it, okay?" The six-pointed star on the cuff of my dark shirt gleamed faintly in the dim light. That light seemed to trace a path down from the corner of my eye, past my collarbone to my chest, and lower still. "Leo," Clara murmured, her eyes burning like fire, like a vast ocean about to swallow us both whole. White flashes blinked before my eyes. Later, she looked up at me, a little sheepish. "So, how many of those calming teacups did you drink exactly?" "Just one," she admitted. In reality, she hadn't taken any medication at all. She had just taken several cold showers to give herself a fever. But that was a secret she would never tell anyone. "I don't believe you. No more messing around with things like that. I'd rather you just take things slow." "But Leo, I think the effect hasn't worn off yet. I'm still really uncomfortable," she whined playfully. "And if you won't let me take my medicine in the future, I'll definitely fail again. So you have to let me get enough this time?" My heart softened, and I pulled her back down to me. "Leo," she asked after a while, "does the medicine make you feel good?" I nodded vaguely, my mind blissfully blank. "Yeah." "Does it feel better than with her?" Yeah. I felt like I was floating. "I think so too," she whispered, a triumphant note in her voice. "She's almost 30. Women that age can't keep up, unlike me." She trailed off, and I was too blissfully distracted to ask what she meant. At the peak of it all, she whispered in my ear, "Let's get the marriage certificate tomorrow. First thing in the morning, okay?" I hadn't intended to agree so quickly, but whenever I hesitated, she would begin to withdraw, and in the end, I could only nod, my voice choked with emotion. "Okay. First thing in the morning." Victoria heard the news from Ethan. She had spent a sleepless night at the old family home, finally dozing off at dawn, feeling more dejected than she ever had in her life. She never thought Leo would actually go through with taking Sam. He had bypassed her completely, gone straight to her grandmother, and her grandmother had actually agreed, granting him full custody. What surprised her even more was the discovery that the media leak hadn't come from Leo at all. Her own father, in a moment of arrogant pride, had revealed the secret to Ethan. She had been so disappointed in Leo, so quick to judge and punish him, and she had been completely wrong. In that moment of realization, Victoria had to admit that she felt a pang of panic. It was a brief, alien feeling, and she had quickly suppressed it, confident in her ability to fix things. She knew Leo. He was straightforward and generous. He didn't hold grudges. She was sure that all she had to do was go to him, say a few sweet words, and he would come back. After all, he loved her. He cared about her so much. But she had never expected Ethan to burst in early that morning, telling her that Leo had gotten a marriage certificate with someone else. Today. That woman, Clara Reed, had wasted no time, shamelessly posting a photo of their marriage certificates on her social media. "Sis, what's going on? This has to be fake, right?" Ethan rambled. "It's photoshopped. How could Clara Reed marry my brother-in-law? She's the sole heir of the Reed family. Besides, I just saw him at the mall a few days ago buying stuff for you. How could he just marry someone else?" Victoria suddenly looked up. "What day was that?" "A few days ago," Ethan said, stomping his foot in frustration. "I don't remember the exact date. It was around the same time you were photographed with Julian." Victoria took out her phone, scrolling through her messages and call history from that day. She remembered. She had even called Leo to ask what he had bought and returned. Her heart sank. Leo had bought something for her, or so she thought. He would never return a gift meant for her just to pay for it again with a different card. There was only one explanation. The gift was never for her. It was for Clara. "Give me the phone," she said, taking Ethan's phone and pulling up the photos from Clara's social media. Sure enough, in one picture, Clara held up a red marriage certificate, her arm slightly visible. Victoria's eyes zeroed in on the cuff of the woman's shirt. Pinned to it was a star-shaped brooch. It was from her favorite brand, but it wasn't her style. Victoria put the phone down and, in a rare, uncharacteristic move, lit a cigarette. "Sis, are those photos fake?" Ethan asked cautiously. He felt like he was losing his mind. He had always thought Leo wasn't good enough for his sister, that she was settling. But now that Leo was really gone, it didn't feel right. Looking back, no matter how coldly he had treated Leo, Leo had never held it against him. He was a good guy. Even his own father sometimes had to admit it, grudgingly saying that Leo had a way of winning people over, that even the family staff sided with him. "You should go," Victoria said, her voice flat. "I want to be alone." Ethan left without another word. Feeling suffocated, Victoria took her pack of cigarettes and went out into the backyard garden. A few of the servants were talking with the head gardener. "Oh, be careful with these flowers," one was saying. "They're our dear son-in-law's favorite. Yes, every time he comes back, the first thing he does is come check on them." "Speaking of him," said another, "do you think he's just having a little spat with the missus? She's always making such a big deal out of nothing. If I were him, I'd be upset too." "Who knows? But I've never met someone as nice as him. No airs about him at all." The cigarette burned down to the filter, scalding her fingertip. Victoria flinched, dropping the butt. The wind quickly scattered the ash. The voices faded away. She looked at the wilting flowers in the garden beds, thinking that winter was coming. The flowers wouldn't bloom again until next spring. But would the person who had planted them ever return? For the first time, she felt she had lost the courage to even ask. 5 years into my marriage with Clara, I finally convinced her to try for another baby. The Reed family had been in a quiet uproar over her decision not to have more children. Her mother would often cry on my shoulder, lamenting that they would never have tried to break us up all those years ago if they had known things would turn out this way. After all their efforts, their daughter had finally married, only to adopt another man's son as her own. It made me feel awkward, but Clara told me to pay her mother no mind. "She's superficial," Clara would say. "Besides, I already have Sam. He's my son, and one day I'll give him everything the Reed family has to offer." I couldn't help but laugh. "Isn't that just gifting everything to the Vance family?" Clara would grin, pulling me close. "It's not me who's alone and miserable now, is it?" "But please, Clara," I would coax gently. "Sam wants a little brother or sister. And think about it, honey. When we're old and gone, what if he's all alone?" She finally yielded to my pleas. She underwent a reversal surgery, and soon enough we had a baby girl who looked just like her, so beautiful it took my breath away. Clara adored our daughter, but she still loved Sam with a fierce, unwavering devotion. The Reed family was overjoyed. The day after our daughter was born, Clara had to have another minor corrective surgery. Later, as we lay in bed together, she was pensive, worried about her health. I teased her, "Why don't you try a cup of your special calming tea?" She coughed. "I think I'll let you try it first this time." I collapsed onto the bed, laughing, and her weight landed on top of me. "Leo, don't laugh. What if I can't?" I kissed her gently. Okay, I won't laugh." She held my face in her hands, her expression suddenly serious. "Leo, I do love you." "I know, honey." I nibbled her earlobe playfully. "And you?" "I love you very much, too. Once upon a time, long ago, and far into the future."